Lloyd Daniels, born September 4th, 1967. If I can make them at night, imagine what I could do when the lights come on. Today's feature made that quote early in high school when a friend of his asked, "Why are you always on the court at night working out by yourself? Couldn't you do the same thing during the day?" That quote told a lot about Daniels, mostly that he was no question a hard worker that loved the game, but also showed his love for movement and darkness that made him feel his true self. The secret life. One could say Lloyd Daniels was a professional at that as well. Growing up in Brooklyn in the 70s and 80s was probably the most difficult time to navigate. Drugs, crime, lack of attention at home due to parents just trying to survive and keep a roof over their heads. His mother died at 4 years old, and his father had his own demons that would subconsciously influence young Daniels and led to his biggest growth stunt of all. Basketball brains like Tom Konchowski and Hall of Fame coach Jerry Tarkanian, who has seen maybe every great moment in the history of basketball and came across just as many great players, once called Lloyd Daniels the greatest player they've ever seen. Tarkanian believed in him and would be the lifeline he'd eventually need in life itself. In high school and on the playgrounds of New York, Daniels' name rang every bell, and he heard those. The ones he wasn't hearing were the school bells that cost him a lot more than he'd realized in hindsight. Nevertheless, the prodigy was said to have been destined to be drafted into the NBA, and those who knew him expected him to be a star. That never happened, and here are 3 reasons why. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Swee Pea is a character from the Popeye comic strip and also a name given to Lloyd Daniels as a child in Brooklyn after his friends noticed their physical similarities. As an eventual 6'8" point guard shooting guard, Daniels rose up the ranks quickly for his smooth style of play and also his ability to pass, which many likened to Magic Johnson. He was right on pace on the basketball floor, but school is where he'd struggle, and not because he wasn't smart or savvy enough to excel, he just chose not to. He'd fail every class prior to high school and was moved up to the level on a state technicality that allowed it if the child was over a certain age. Learning basic skills like reading and writing are still a question if he could. But in those days, if you were good enough and enough people believed in you, it was, quote, worked out. What's up, guys? Become a patron now. There you can find exclusive workouts, move breakdowns, and tutorials to help your development in certain areas. Also, receive consulting each week with me where I help break down your game and build you into the player you want to become. Patreon.com/stuntedgrowth for more. Link is in the description. Enjoy the video. Stunt number 1, addiction. No, not quite what you may think. Yes, Daniels was addicted to drugs and other substances, but even deeper, I think he was addicted to anything that made him enjoy his reality just a little more. Whether it was not going to school to be with his friends all day, drinking, smoking, and doing what he loved most, talking, laughing, and having a good time. Or even when he would go to school, he'd sneak out the side door after a period or two, found a bottle and some smoke, and spend the rest of the day playing hooky, as he calls it. At a young age, Daniels was held as a future star and was treated as such. So he'd have teachers cover for him, or he'd have friends pick him up from school and joyride the rest of the day. Most importantly, he'd have his drug of choice awaiting him in those hours he was supposed to be polishing his education. He's reportedly attended 5 different schools because when he was actually attending, his work wasn't at the level of the other kids, and it led to him seeking a fresh start elsewhere. He began to smoke coke and eventually crack around that time, and later it would play a big role in him not being able to enter the NBA sooner. Leaving high school, his grades weren't eligible to act on one of the many scholarship offers he had, but Jerry Tarkanian believed in him so much that he found a loophole in the system which allowed him to attend summer school, and should he pass, he would finally play for the coach of his dreams. Then, one early Vegas morning, while the police ran a sting on a crack house, here comes Lloyd Daniels to buy drugs. He was arrested at the crack house and then removed from the team and university umbrella. He would never play a game for Tarkanian as he slipped further away from his NBA dreams. Stunt number 2, continued drug abuse. You'd think a wake-up call as serious as losing out on the only opportunity he had at the time to showcase his talent would make the crack smoking stop. It only got worse. He'd be forced to move back to New York and fell into his old habits once again. Until one night, while selling drugs, he figured he could beat his customers, who were a lot smaller than him, on the product. Upon receiving the money, less than $10, he ran off and made it all the way to his house, thinking he just may have gotten away. The guys showed up to his door and asked to speak to Lloyd. Again, still his confident, drug-fused self, he went outside to talk to the guys and assured them they wouldn't be getting anything from him. One guy pulled out a gun and shot him 3 times in the chest, leaving him to die in the front of his own home. Miraculously, he lived. He was near death on the surgery table and lived. But it wouldn't be enough. Now no high school credentials, kicked out of the UNLV program, and now shot and trying to recover, it should have been over for Lloyd Daniels. But like the cat with 9 lives, he wiggled his way into another chance. He'd find a CBA team in Miami to play for, and things were going great. He was 19 years old, sober for the most part, recently met a woman that would eventually become his wife, and on the court again. But the demon that followed and called out to him was too loud. He relapsed time and time again until the team released him for his inability to stop using and it affecting his physical shape. Over, right? Wrong. In his 7th life, Coach Tarkanian would take an NBA job for the Spurs. Guess who would be his first choice? Not Avery Johnson or David Robinson, Lloyd Daniels. Coming off a tryout with the Knicks, who said it was the worst workout ever and that Lloyd was an NBA talent, Tarkanian signed him as a free agent and started him at point guard. The no high school diploma having, crack smoking, crack house dwelling, minor league washout, left for dead cat that could talk his hands into slapping his own face, made it. He was there, the bright lights. But it took everything to do so, and by all accounts, should have happened sooner. But at 25, it did, and Tarkanian was his biggest fan. He gave him every chance to succeed, but in the process, the team began to slip with Daniels as the focus, leading Tarkanian to being fired and John Lucas taking over as coach. Lucas, who saw a lot of his former addict self in Lloyd, didn't allow him to play as Tark did, and Daniels eventually asked to be traded, which Lucas couldn't wait to do. Stunt number 3, blown opportunities. Lloyd Daniels would be the first to tell you of the opportunities he's blown over his career and life. Against all odds, he still made it to the league as the only player in history to never graduate high school and still play. He not only played, but for multiple teams including the Spurs, the Lakers, New Jersey Nets, Sacramento Kings, Philadelphia, and Toronto. He had his chance, but he never stopped being addicted. At 30 years old, he was no longer seen for the amount of potential he once had, but a risk for a player that was a shell of who he should have been. One still fighting those demons to this day. Blown opportunities were the name of the game since day one for Lloyd, and washing out the NBA in 5 years to go back to substance abuse was right on schedule. All in all, Lloyd Daniels was a resilient story and one of a kind, because everything that could go wrong for him did at some point, and at the end of the day, he still got to the promised land. He went on to play all over the world and coach AAU basketball, where he tries to give the same guidance he and a lot of us didn't have, and that's to be respected. No, he didn't become an NBA star, and yes, his career and life can be seen as a disappointment, but Lloyd Daniels made it against all odds. Salute to him, much respect. I hope he's doing well. He's done a lot for the culture. If nothing, he was a story that can help someone else in the same position in the future. His story is greatly appreciated, and I'm glad I got the chance to tell it. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out. Make sure you follow me on twitch.tv/stuntedgrowthgaming if you want extra free content like me breaking down the day's highlights, moves, drafts, and past players or games upon your request. Let's chat and talk live, as it's easier to answer your questions than a place like Instagram where your messages tend to get lost. Follow me there, it's free, and we can connect instantly. Join the Discord as well to chat in-game. I'll leave links to everything below.